Hi, everyone. My name is Jill Krefft, and I am the IR coordinator at Florida International University. And today I'm going to share with you our experiences with publishing multilingual open access journals at FIU. To give you a little bit of context to this talk, I want to give you a quick look at our institution. We were founded in 1972 in Miami, Florida. Since then, we've grown to become a large urban R1 research university with 5 campuses and over 57,000 students currently enrolled. We're a member of the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities and are the top institution in the US in enrolling and graduating Hispanic students. We have a strong connection to Latin America and Caribbean through research partnerships with institutions and scholars across disciplines within the region. I think we're all pretty aware that English is the dominant language in scholarly publishing, though the level of dominance may vary across disciplines. So for example, we might see English dominating more in the hard sciences versus the humanities, though it still does dominate in the humanities. So as an example of this, there are approximately 27,000 journals indexed in Web of Science. And again, they're mostly in English, and these numbers are coming from the citation on this slide. In contrast, there are about 9,000 journals that are published in other languages, and these are predominantly excluded from those major indexes like Web of Science. And I've shared some numbers for those languages that encompass that 9,000 journals. So with over 527 million native English speakers worldwide and over 1.5 billion English language learners, English speakers in scholarly publishing carry certain privileges in publishing and in academia in general. This puts those that are non-English speakers, even non-native English speakers, at a disadvantage. This often means less opportunities for publishing, presenting, and obtaining funding. It also means it hinders the use of those English materials by non-English speakers and limits the transfer of knowledge between communities. It also means that local knowledge is essentially being exported. So for example, if you have a French historian who may be pushed to publish in an English language journal because of the status of the journal, even though the large part of the research community is local. So again, according to a study which I've cited here on the slide, the open access impact on views and citations are higher in native languages, which I think is really important to note here, as it makes a strong case for supporting these multilingual journals, not just to counteract the other points on this slide, but also to emphasize that journals in native languages are an asset rather than a handicap. At FIU, multilingualism in research is common simply because of our connection to Latin America and strong representation of Hispanic students. Today, I'm going to share with you 2 multilingual journals we currently are publishing through our IR and share with you some of the challenges and opportunities we've experienced while working with editorial boards that are distributed throughout Latin America and are comprised of non-native English speakers and non-English speakers. And then I'll talk more sort of on the administrative side of these journals, since I'm coming from the perspective of the IR coordinator. One of the journals is a journal that publishes research on literacy practices, and the other is a public health medical research journal. And I chose these 2 because while the disciplines are very different, there are also a lot of commonalities in the challenges we faced. These journals are a result of existing collaborations between our FIU faculty and research partners and institutions in Latin America and the Caribbean. The first publication I wanted to share with you is Lire Escribir y Descubrir. This is a publication of the Latin American Committee for the Development of Reading and Writing. The journal was founded in 2013 and was based out of Venezuela, and it publishes issues 2 to 3 times a year in both print and digital from authors across Latin America and the Caribbean. Articles are in English or Spanish, and predominantly Spanish, but all abstracts are in both English and Spanish. And this was always the case with the journal and not something that we suggested. They already, or the editorial board and the founders of the journal, already understood the importance of providing a place for scholars to submit their research in Spanish, but that providing an abstract in English sort of increases the discoverability of these articles. In 2017, one of our FIU faculty members who is on the editorial board for this journal came to me looking for a place to move the existing digital journal. This was at a time when Venezuela's constitutional crisis began and infrastructure and resources were limited and failing within the country. So with unstable and intermittent internet access, the journal could not guarantee that it would be available online, and they were looking for a persistent and stable location for the journal. So of course, we were happy to help, and we immediately got to work. But moving the journal to Digital Commons, which is our repository platform at FIU, was not without its challenges. So first of all, I don't speak Spanish, but luckily many of my colleagues do. So it did require additional staff to help communicate to some of the non-English speaking editorial team. This was also the case on the Digital Commons side. So usually because it is a hosted platform, we have support through them, and Digital Commons does provide training for the editorial staff once the site is put on a demo site. And a few of those editorial board members did not attend the training because they are non-English speakers, and there was nobody on the Digital Commons side to provide training in Spanish to those non-English speakers. Our FIU faculty member attended along with a couple of other board members who did speak English, and then they sort of communicated back to the rest of the editorial board. So that was sort of the first challenge we experienced with this journal. The second one is that we were not able to provide the back-end text in Spanish. So while we could provide submission text, metadata fields in Spanish, all of the site text, the about this journal, all of that stuff we could put in Spanish, there were lots of things we were not able to customize and translate. So all of the configuration, the whole peer review process, everything was in English. All of the sort of functionalities were in English. And even for those non-native English speakers, some of that terminology was not clear to them as it may have been for a native speaker. So ultimately, the editorial team decided not to use the peer review tools to manage submissions from authors, which is unfortunate because I think that's really one of the strengths of our system is providing these peer review tools. And the third challenge is that we did move this journal over to our repository. So we did upload back issues into our system. And again, that was challenging because I don't speak Spanish. So there were errors in the metadata, and quality control was a bit more difficult. So we had to have a few more people involved in that quality control part. Overall, this journal has been incredibly successful. They have seen their readership increase dramatically since they've moved to our repository, and they continue to publish several times a year. So overall, it's been a wonderful experience. The next journal I want to talk about is the American Journal of Non-Communicable Diseases. And it's a journal we are bringing up in partnership with the America's Network for Chronic Disease Surveillance, or AMNET. The president of AMNET is a faculty member of our Herbert Wertheim College of Medicine. The journal is devoted to the dissemination of research articles from a broad range of disciplines related to epidemiology, public health, health promotion, implementation, dissemination science, health policy, surveillance, monitoring, and governance related to non-communicable diseases. And again, it provides a platform for scholars to publish their research in those fields, as long as the original research is relevant to North, Central, and South America, as well as the Caribbean. And this journal accepts submissions in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So we have another language that's represented within this journal. The editorial board is made up of members from institutions in the US, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, and Sweden. And this journal is forthcoming. And so right now we're really just finalizing the site text and workflows before it goes live. The most challenging piece of this journal was that information had to be presented in 3 languages. So from the site text to that submission information, article templates, and more, all of that really needed to somehow be provided in 3 languages for authors. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the cite text here, because that's where we ran into probably the biggest challenge so far. So for the cite text, we initially had all 3 languages on each of the pages. So about the journal, the editorial board, guidelines for authors. But it was really not a great user experience. And so the editorial board, a lot of these policies are really long, and it scrolls, and even with a jump list, it just was too much. So we've added the Google Translate option for the cite text. And now a word about Google Translate, it's not great. It's good, but not great. And so the editorial team right now is evaluating the translation that's provided on the cite text pages to ensure that it's sufficient to communicate it. And again, Google Translate, when it comes to sort of more technical translations, that's where it really struggles. So otherwise, we will go back to presenting the information in these 3 languages, but this has been sort of the biggest struggle. For this journal, we do have all of our board members do speak English, so the back end use and translation is not a problem. They are able to move through it and understand everything really easily. But it's the 3 languages and presenting the information in multiple languages that has really been challenging. So what are some of the lessons learned from these 2 journals? Well, first, English is still required. Even though we are publishing in multiple languages, at some point, our editorial team does need to speak English because of the back end of our system. Google Translate is an option, but it's not a great option. And so it would be nice to have some other alternative to be able to switch between languages really easily on the cite text. And also there is a growing need. So in the last couple of years, we have continually been getting requests to provide collections in multiple languages, and not just in English and Spanish, but also in Arabic, in Japanese, in all of those languages. And so we are and not just for our journal collections, this sort of multilingualism in research is growing, and the need to share that information is growing. And of course, each journal is unique. So what works for one journal is not always going to work for another journal. And that probably is true, not just for multilingual journals, but for all journals. So how can we support multilingualism in publishing? There's a really great article by Kelly McElroy and Laurie Bridges that really outlines this English-dominated scholarly publishing landscape well, and provides a call to action for libraries and scholarly publishers to incorporate multilingualism at our institutions and within our own library collections. This includes providing abstracts in multiple languages, just as we've done with our literacy journal, and that just improves discoverability. Also things like putting out CFPs in multiple languages to encourage that collaboration among different language speakers. And libraries can also pursue funding for translation of materials. Of course, I think that's something that's much more difficult for many of us, particularly with funding sources being really difficult to come by. But we as IR managers and library publishers can join in on what McElroy and Bridges call this grassroots efforts to expand multilingualism, multilingual access to scholarly materials. So I've included here some more resources to read if you're interested in this topic. And thank you very much.